I actually have no idea, but I'm hoping we're getting close, because I want to shoot this and then go home. I mean, that'd be nice. Oh, look, a fork in the road. I gotta pick which way to go now. Being honest, I am a little bit rushing it on the trying to get home bit, but this is actually the point, you know, allowing myself to get out of my comfort zone, to go and do a creative work, and then hopefully look back on it and be like, yeah, no, that was worth it. Taking that extra step out there, to do something that should prayerfully fill up that creative cup that hasn't been filled, get back and turn creativity into my new comfort zone. Well, not my new comfort zone, but revert back to creativity as my comfort zone, and taking risks and stepping out and moving forward, being comfortable with being uncomfortable, as they say. But yeah, we're still trekking. When it comes to creativity, the right environment is so important. So getting to go and be around, other creatives after having been like in the 9 to 5 grind and not really doing anything creative for a while, doing such mind-numbing work, I got to a place where I feel like parts of me that I loved was starting to be erased. Even in how my brain functions, how my mind works, I started to lose that. I'm an actor. I have not been on stage in, I can't even remember how long. It's been like maybe a year, 2 years, something like that. Like, I've done some online performances during the pandemic, but in terms of actually like getting on stage and performing, I haven't done that in a while. So a friend reached out and wanted to kind of just like workshop a little bit, like not like a full-on performance, so it's still not technically being back on stage, but a workshop of a play called New World Order by Harold Pinter. So why am I here? Because the play, when reading it, you get the sense of the characters are part of some country's secret police force, and they're there and they're talking to one another. So these two secret police officers are talking to each other, and there's a guy sitting in the middle of the stage, and he's got like a bag over his head or a blindfold, and they're talking, and he starts off with, do you want to know something about this man? He hasn't got any idea of any one of the number of things that we're going to do to him. Talking, it becomes sort of like a psychological torture type situation. So why did I end up here? This is one of the abandoned buildings of Murphy's Ranch. And so I took this entire hike just to shoot this here, because I felt like, uh, you know, secret police, Nazis, they go together. They fit. Then when we got to our first, rehearsal, I got on stage, and the very first thing we did was like, we're just going to read the play out loud. So we just sat there, we read the play out loud, and then one of my friends who was kind of like running the show was like, all right, do you guys have any questions, any thoughts just about the play? I was kind of a bit quieter at first, but then I started to, make comments as, they started to make comments, and, it was kind of like a slow progression. I started to feel like, okay, I'm not fully there yet. I can feel the rust, but like This is where my brain is supposed to be. This is how my brain is supposed to be working. This is how I like when my brain is working. I'm starting to feel more like myself. When I came back for the second rehearsal, I felt like I was so much like I took what I had from the first rehearsal and I had built on it so much of like, oh, I'm back. Like I came in and, I'm there and I'm talking to them about like, look, I was doing this research and this was the idea and this was the this and that was the that and what if and did you know? And I had done so much things that started to feed back into my creativity that it didn't matter what type of day I had at work. And it's not to say, because I do have a video, Maya Angelou and Toni Morrison having a conversation that they never had, where, it talks about like, no, like you don't always get to be in the perfect situation as an artist, which I'll get to. But when you are in that right environment, it feeds you so much that you want to bring so much of yourself, so much of your true self back to that environment each time that you come. Don't sleep on having the right environment and being in the right environment and being around, other creatives that, that can push you and you can push them, so that you can achieve something where the sum is greater than its parts. So Einstein has a quote, and he says that creativity is intelligence having fun. Now, if there's something that I've learned about myself, it's the fact that, like, there's very few things that, like, I get, like, rabbit hole interested in. Like, I'm watching a million things, I'm learning about this, I'm learning about that, until I start working on a role. So, as I'm working on New World Order by Harold Pinter, I started to say, okay, so it's unspecific in the script, like what kind of secret police force this is, what government they're a part of, etc. So I'm on YouTube, I'm watching a video, top 10 worst secret police forces in, human history. So I'm going through, I'm watching all those, and I got to a place where I like to say it feels like specifically unspecific, because I started to say, okay, well, you know what? Might as well just go ahead and take stuff from every last one of these and melt it all into one, because maybe that's more so what the piece is having a conversation on, is them in general. But at the same time, you don't want to play them generally. You want to play them specifically, because when it comes to specifics, and that's another thing with creativity, you have to be specific, because when it comes to specifics, like the general can move us but so much. But when it comes down to the specific is what moves us immediately, even if it's just in thought and, gets the gears turning, get your brain moving. I'll be, after doing that research, I'll have moments where I'm just laying in bed and I'm just like kind of reciting lines from the play to myself and just kind of taking different things from the videos that I watched, the podcasts that I was listening to, the shows that I was watching that had to deal with, secret police forces, and just kind of creating different things like, you know, okay, wait a second. What if it is a teacher student relationship, but I'm also possibly informing on him as I would inform on anybody, because that's my job. And torture, we can see that he's torturing, that the two characters are torturing the one character, not physically, but there is torture going on, right? And so everybody knows what torture is. Like, oh, torture, that's bad. But if you sit there and keep it in the general, that's as far as my work is going to go. But once I start to get to specific, when I start to look at like, oh, these people would go into people's houses when they weren't there and just start moving furniture around. Like, imagine coming home and, the couch is on the other side of the room and you're like, who? I would back right out the door. But I mean, this was kind of a norm. This was kind of their reality. It's like a psychological torture. They go in your sock drawer and start moving stuff around. And I was like, oh, that fits a lot with the psychological torture that seems to be going on in this script. I'm gonna steal some of that because maybe my character started doing some of that. You know, maybe that's where he started off, and now he's where he's at now. Let's put it this way. He has little idea of what we might do to him, of what, in fact, we are about to do to him. There was torture that was like cartoon level torture. Like in the winter, spraying people down with water hoses and making ice statues out of them. Now that hits you a little bit more than just the word torture, the specifics of it. Now, yes, sometimes you can get too specific with certain things, and it can become uh, uh, that research. It led me to the Stasi, the German secret police force, the other German secret police force, and I hooked more into them because in my research I found that the Stasi had a poetry circle. So yes, the government formed secret police had a poetry circle. Sometimes I feel like the Holy Spirit will sometimes just like when I'm focused on a topic, I'll find stuff out just even when I'm not even trying to do any research on it. Like even, bringing in the Einstein quote right now was because I was watching a video, I believe it was Vicky Zhao, and it was about slow reading and taking smart notes. And in that, I found quotes, I found things that like brought insight into me playing this role, but I wasn't looking for those things there. I found like, oh, this is related to like how the Stasi, like how they married, and East Germany married, Brain and Brawn, talking about the ancient Greek, Plato's Academy, and how there was like thinking isn't static, how there's movement to thinking, there's movement. How many times do I have to tell you, you've got to learn how to define your terms and stick to them? You can't call him a cunt in one breath and a prick in the next. The terms are mutually contradictory. You lose face in any linguistic discussion group. Take my tip. Definitely. And you know what it means to you. You know what language means to you. Which is also why I was like, you know what, maybe have a hike all the way up to, Murphy's Ranch, a former Nazi secret camp in Santa Monica, California. And I used to tell people when it comes to me with creativity and with acting, and I tell them when they'd ask me, I don't just run up on people like, hey, you wanna hear something? The things that I think made me a good actor is two things. One is constantly living inside of imagination. Second was doing well in school. And granted, it's not so much about the grades. It's not about like, oh, getting A's and B's or whatever the case may be, but more so learning things so that way your mind is in a place where you can understand things about characters, about people, about life, about, you know, whatever, quicker, more. You know how to delve into those things. There's actually a wonderful, wonderful quote that stuck with me since I heard it. It's a couple quotes from the play Red by John Logan.
You've got a lot to learn, young man. Philosophy, theology, literature, poetry, drama, history, archaeology, anthropology, mythology, music. Come on, these are your tools as much as brush and pigment. And then it comes to him. The divine spark, he illuminates that picture from within. He gives it inner luminosity. That painting, it lives like one of those bioluminescent fish from the bottom of the ocean, radiating its own effulgence. You understand me? Caravaggio. Bring me the second bucket.
Are you really gonna paint?
Now, what the hell do you think I have been doing?
Now, what the hell do you think I have been doing? I would a lot of times have conversations with other actors outside of the acting school that I used to go to at Stella Adler Academy in Los Angeles, and we would just stand there and we would just be talking sometimes for hours, either about the play that we're working on or the world of the play that we're working on. And I'm like, this is this is part of the work. I would sometimes feel that in certain moments I probably wasn't working as hard as some people were. I mean, I still got the results that I still got somewhat acceptable. Okay, I'm not gonna get into that because I'm super critical of myself and my work. But I used to think I wasn't working as hard as some people sometimes. But I had to realize that even when it comes to creativity, everybody works different. Just because I'm not working the way that this person is working, that seems like they're working hard, doesn't mean that I'm not also working hard. You know, sometimes I'm having these conversations for hours upon hours, and this is part of the work. This is part of me, absorbing the ideas into my body, into my psyche. So you have to learn how you work creatively, and just do your work. Just make sure you're doing your work. That's the thing. How you do it is going to differ from how I do it and how the next person does it. But just make sure you're doing the work and you're being specific. It's getting late and it's time to get up out of here. I ain't got no service. I'm in the middle of nowhere. And granted, being in the shade was nice, but it's time to go. So, see you guys when I get home. So, I'm back home now. Not from the hike directly, because that was about a week ago. But I am back and I wanted to talk about the creativity to escape. So when I say that, I'm not necessarily talking about escapism. So I'm not talking about, okay, well, okay, when I get off of work, I'm going to come home and I'm going to just recite monologues or something like that so that way I can feel more creative, or I'm going to go and watch movies and get lost in it. That's good, but that's not necessarily what it is I'm talking about. Because what I'll do is, like, even when I'm at work or things of that nature, I will, if I'm working on a project, I'll be reciting those monologues at work. I'll be working on the voice, in whatever small breaks or moments that I have to be able to do that. But what I am talking about is I'm talking about using your creativity and getting creative about getting out of the situations that you're in that you don't want to be in. If that ends up being a side gig, if that ends up being, a side hustle, something like that, that gives you a little bit more creative freedom, then go for that. I like to think about it in terms of this Einstein quote that I also got from the Vicky Zhao video, in which he says, if I had an hour to be able to try and work on a problem, like to figure out a problem, I would spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and then 5 minutes on solutions. Now, that might be a little bit of an exaggeration in time, but it's about building frameworks. It's about being able to go ahead and take the problem before you and really break it down creatively, break it down into as smaller bits that you can so that you can really get to the heart of it, and then it'll be easier for you to get to the solution. It's like if I'm working on a role and I have to find out the relationship between a father and son. I don't want to just be like, okay, yeah, their relationship is good or their relationship is bad. What I want to do is I want to start asking questions about their past. I want to start really breaking down their relationship because, like I talked about with specifics, whether it's good or bad doesn't help me. But if it's complicated, if it's good, but I know why it's good, these are things that actually are helpful to me. So I want to leave you guys with two things. First thing is, I always say, I believe that we're all made in the image of God, but as creatives, we get to be close to the Creator in a different type of way. And because of that, it makes me believe that creativity is both a responsibility that should not be taken lightly, but it's also something to be heavily enjoyed. Use that responsibility to create, to communicate, and to, that sounds cheesy, but I mean, make the world a bit of a better place, you know? Because creativity has that kind of power. And secondly, and I'm just gonna go ahead and say it now, say all the, like, I appreciate you and everything, because secondly, red.